Welcome to Folklore on the Rocks.
All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, guys.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us here at Folklore on the Rocks. Now, to start off with, I want to start with a special announcement. This is pretty cool. We are actually part of a Megasode collaboration with the show Blood on the Rocks that came out today. The overarching theme of the episode is World War I for the anniversary of Armistice Day. But there are actually several different types of podcasts all doing something related to World War I. Now, our contribution is about 15 minutes about the whale eater cryptid, which was cited by the German sub U-28. Now, listening to it is a great way to sample a bunch of podcasts and see if you want to go listen to some of them as well. Now, they're really, really great people, and we've had a fantastic time collaborating with them. Now, we'll play a promo for Blood on the Rocks a little later on this episode.
Yeah.
What do you think, Linz?
Yeah, I think that sounds great.
Cool. Now, let's get rolling with our show.
Let's get into this.
Oh, this is going to be good. Now, what do we got today, Lindsay?
Today, we have the Domovoi.
Ooh, the Domovoi.
We are talking about the Domovoi, which is the small, hairy old man that might live under your stove and originates in Slavic folklore.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there.
There is.
But if it's Folklore on the Rocks, first we got to have a drink.
Yes, our cocktail of the week. And it is also called the Domovoi.
Ooh, that's convenient.
It is. It is made with Zubrowka bison grass vodka. And it is Polish. It's a Polish vodka, specifically. But Poland is Slavic. So there you go.
Cool.
We also have mojito mix, a squeeze of lime juice, and then it's shaken, poured over ice, and garnished with a sprig of mint. This bison grass vodka is delicious.
So good.
I'm not a big fan of flavored vodkas, but this one is very refreshing. It feels like you're drinking spring.
Yeah, it really does. And I know we're a little bit early. We're just heading into wintertime.
We're looking at the overcast sky outside and
our
drinking
mountains
spring
are just
inside.
about to get all covered in powdery white. And oh, Lindsay, I'm creating my own monster. I am.
Oh, dear.
Look for our pictures on Instagram. Oh, it's going to be amazing. Super bike. We're biking in the snow.
My God.
Yes.
Please don't die.
Oh,
Please.
never. No, it's going to take a lot more than that to take me down.
Just wear protective gear and I'll be fine.
Of course.
I'm excited for your creation, Logan. It will be very exciting.
Amazing. It's just riding around my brain right now in a circle. Just little Logan on a bicycle going 40 miles an hour for no reason.
Okay, so yeah, the Zubrowka vodka, delicious. It's really cool. It actually has like a piece of bison grass inside of it.
I spotted
the bottle.
That. What's
it's
the deal
really
there?
Cool.
Just I'm
guessing it's probably just keeps it flavored. Maybe
Yeah.
I don't know. It maybe just looks cool.
I've had tequila with worms.
Yeah, that's like the tequila with the worms.
I've had drinks with pickled cobras in them, but I've
This
never
is a little less
encountered a piece
horrifying
of
than those other ones. It's a piece of grass. So, but it's very elegant bottle. It tastes delicious. It's actually really good, even just on its own for sipping, which is not a usual thing for a lot of vodka.
No, yeah, it is something I can
typically it's very tasteless. Yeah. Or, I mean, if you're a vodka connoisseur, I mean, you can kind of tell. But generally, it's not very flavorful unless you have flavored ones, which are usually a little too much, I think. But this is like the perfect marriage between that.
This is very nice.
Very lightly flavored. And like I said, tastes like spring.
And if you haven't can't tell, I've had a couple of these.
Yes, he has.
Yes. That's what makes this Folklore on the Rocks.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I will put the recipe on our show notes, and I'm sure that I'll be posting it on our social media as well.
This is a good bit of folklore that would be a good thing to carry on and spread out there.
This specifically.
The more people who know about the Domovoi as a drink, the better.
Exactly. And it is by our, of course, mixologist, Anubis.
We are really lucky to have this connection.
We are. This is a drink that he came up with a while back. He's actually the one that introduced this to me, this vodka. And it's divine. And he created this out of his beautiful mind of mixology. And it's delicious because, of course, it is. Everything.
The man knows his booze.
He really does. All right. So now that we've talked about our cocktail.
Yeah, we've talked about the Domovoi, the drink, but tell us about the
let's get
Domovoi,
into
the creature.
this. Yes. But first, let's talk about what Slavic is.
Oh, yes, please. Yeah, you mentioned this is a Slavic creature. This is something that is, now to me, Slavic, you do the Google search in my brain, it comes out as Slavic is part of Russian and see also Russian. But that's not really what it means when it comes to folklore and culture. Tell us, what does it mean to be a Slav?
Let's break it down. Slav, it indicates an ethnic group of people that are mostly from Eastern Europe and some Central Europe and Asia. I mean, Asia, that would be like the Russia aspect, right? And Russia covers a very large portion of Asia. And they're a group of people that share cultural aspects and they speak related languages. So the Slavic languages, which all belong to the Indo-European language family. I'm not going to bore you too much with more linguistics, but it is one of my favorite things. So you have to deal with a little bit more.
Yeah, you should know by now I'm a little bit of a word nerd myself. So.
Yes. So there are more than 20 Slavic languages, and they're divided into 3 subgroups: East, West, and South. The major languages, so the ones with more than 1 million speakers, are East. We've got Russian, Belarusian, and Ukrainian. In West, we have Polish, Czech, and Slavic.
Yeah.
And then in the South, we have Slovenian, Serbian, Croatian, Bosnian, Macedonian, and Bulgarian.
I worked with an excellent Belarusian high diver once upon a time. Alex, drinking my drink to you. Alex Yurchik, excellent diver. Nevertheless, a good guy.
Good to know, Logan. Thank you for that. He sounds cool. So if you want more history on these languages, or if you want to do a deeper dive into the linguistic differences, I'll include a link on our website that has some really great information.
Oh, yeah. Like
I said, show notes. Our show notes are awesome for our episodes. We have some really cool stuff on there. Basically, I try to list as much as I possibly can so that if you're interested in these, you can go to the same sources we used and learn even more.
Yeah, if you want to dig deeper, we invite you to do so.
There's only so much that we can fit in these episodes, and there is always more.
Yeah, we'll leave some breadcrumbs, but feel free to get lost in the woods.
Yes. Follow down those research rabbit holes just like I do every time I do research. Slavic folklore, it generally refers to the predominantly pagan religion and folktales from that region before Christianity was introduced.
It got really cool for a while, and then
so the tales, they were generally passed down via oral tradition, and most weren't even written down in any form until about the 9th or 10th centuries, when the pagan religion was slowly and very painfully being assimilated into Eastern Orthodox Christianity.
I know. Yeah. Vlad the Impaler and I both thought it was bullshit, but here we are anyway.
Here we are. So folk belief and paganism, they actually never really went away, though. And to this day, there's actually even a modern branch of Slavic paganism, which is often referred to as a name that I'm going to slaughter. It is referred to as Rodnovery or Rodnovery or something along those lines. I asked the subreddit and they said it's exactly like it looks, and then I still didn't know. So it's something like that, but it's pretty cool. So it's kind of like neo-paganism for the Slavic folk religion, right? Many of the folktales, they've survive to this day as well, and while belief in Slavic folklore may not be as widespread as it once was, most of the creatures that are from these tales are still pretty well known, actually. In fact, belief in spirits that protected the homestead, like the one we'll be talking about today, it was one of the longest lasting holdovers from folk belief. So, to put it mildly, there are numerous accounts and eyewitnesses regarding the Domovoi.
Okay, so it's a pretty common thing. It's something that if you were to ask someone about their Domovoi, they might actually have a story for you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Every household has a Domovoi.
Cool.
And we'll talk about that more in a sec. But he's the most closely associated with humans, and so has the most interaction with humans, right? All the other spirits are more wild or outside of human interaction or that kind of thing. So Domovois are who they encountered the most often, or were the explanation for things that happened at home, right? So the name of the Domovoi, it means he of the house, or something like that. Dome means house or home in, I believe, Russian, but I'm sure that the prefix is kind of more the general Slavic languages, right?
Yeah. And it also, dome meaning home is pretty common throughout all of kind of the Latin-based languages as well. Things like domus, domicile, domestic.
Yeah, or maybe we just grabbed it from
That
Slavic languages.
also happens.
Because English is the weirdest mishmash of languages ever. Like, technically, we're a Germanic language, which is really weird because a good chunk of our language is Latin-based.
Yes,
which makes it so difficult to learn.
But it's also very rare that you see a letter and don't say a letter here. So that does kind of go back to a more Teutonic
But we have
tradition.
the weirdest roles.
Oh, I know. But yet no
We do.
masculine, no feminine, just simply objective.
It's a bizarre language, and I feel so bad for anybody that has to learn English as like a second language,
Yeah,
because it's so hard.
That's why I stick my studies to Esperanto and semaphore.
Okay. Oh, man. So Domovoi is the Russian term for the spirit. The rest of the Slavic countries, they use very similar names, and they're all basically for the same creature, right? Like Domovic is from Ukraine, or Damovic is from Belarus. Those are just a couple examples. They all kind of have their different names, but it's the same creature essentially, and it sounds very similar
Cool.
too, right? So many of the tales and the aspects of the Domovoi, they differ by country and province. So just kind of know that the stuff that we're going to talk about today is relative to the place that it came from.
Okay.
Right? I'm going to be saying a lot of in some places or in some regions. And just note in advance that it's different countries, it's different provinces. It covers a very, very large area.
Yeah, and
Right.
but that maybe ties back to when you said every house has its own Domovoi.
Exactly.
They are not an individual creature, kind of like we had with the Groot slang earlier.
Exactly, yeah.
They're a kind of creature.
They are. And that means that every family's going to have a different tale about it. Every family's going to have a different way they see their own Domovoi.
Oh.
But weirdly, it's also very similar too,
Kind of has a little bit of consistency.
which to me lends more credence to it
Sure.
as a creature, right? But it also could be just the benefits of living in these small villages and stuff, and everybody talks about their Domovoi and things kind of progress that way, right? You know, they start small and they get big and they kind of become universal over a very wide region as people travel, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the main source that I've used for today's research is mostly from a book that's about Russian folk belief. So much of what I'm actually going to end up talking about is Russia, but like I said, it bleeds over into a lot of the other countries and provinces too.
Yeah.
Russia still covers an exceptionally large area, right? And many of the same elements appear in multiple stories. But there are no absolutes in any regard for the Domovoi. And just so that you guys know, this the research that I did is, like I said, it's mostly from a book about Russian folk belief. And that book is by Linda J. Ivanitz. And she, I believe she's a professor somewhere back east in the U.S. I can't remember exactly where. I'll look it up and I'll stick it in the show notes. But her book is an exceptional resource for anything about Russian folk belief. And the Domovoi and other household spirits basically have their own chapter in this book, which it was extremely useful to look into. So the Domovoi is actually never directly called Domovoi. which is interesting.
Really?
Yeah. They didn't like to call it by its name or call him by his name or call him a Domovoi. They most often referred to him in euphemisms like master or he himself, well-wisher, the other half, livestock nourisher, that one, or grandfather.
Yes.
Which is actually pretty indicative of the potential origin in the family's ancestry. So, like, he was potentially a former head of household of that family. And this idea that the Domovoi is an ancestor to the family is actually pretty universal. He's regarded as, like, a benevolent guardian spirit to a particular family. And each household has their own, like we talked about. Every household has their own Domovoi. So it makes sense that this spirit would actually be a past family member who's looking out for his descendants.
Sure, yeah. I
Right?
was actually thinking the same thing, where it's like at the end of a story, you could become a Domovoi.
Yeah,
Maybe.
definitely. His benevolence was essential to the proper functioning of the homestead and the family unit. And he kind of oversaw all of the domestic activities, ensuring that they were done properly. And if they were not, well, we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah.
So what does the Domovoi look like? He actually doesn't show up in Slavic folk art very much, but his image is actually pretty universal. He is a small, ancient, wizened old peasant man. And he has like a long gray beard. In some stories, he's exceptionally like very hairy, like almost furry. And he's often wearing a blue shirt and sometimes shoes called lapti, which were made of bast. And bast is a fiber from tree bark. And the shoes were woven like a basket and they were fitted to the shape of a foot. So they were really, really easy to make, but they were not durable in any sense of the word. So they were essentially peasant shoes, right? Cheap to make, not exactly durable, but you could just keep making more, you know?
Okay.
And people have actually been making and wearing these shoes since Neolithic times, which is pretty cool, I think. They've found rocks that people would shape and weave these shoes around. And they found them from thousands and thousands of years ago, which I think is fascinating. He essentially looks like a peasant, but he's also like the size of a small child too.
Okay.
People have said that he also has tiny horns and a tail, or also horse ears.
Yeah, well, who doesn't?
Exactly, right?
Come on, it's 2018. Don't hate.
But that I think that's kind of came to be more as Christianity started creeping in
Yeah.
to the Slavic regions,
That
right?
fits, yeah.
You know, something that we consider a demon or a spirit. We're gonna slap a pair of horns on him and a tail and...
Yeah, the mark of the beast. I never understood it. Here's the deal with the mark of the beast. The horns, the tail, that's a mark of just like something that eats plants.
Cows have that.
Yeah.
Right? Goats have that.
Yeah. No predators have
Kind of weird.
horns.
But I think in this aspect, it's more of a demonic thing.
Yeah.
But, I mean, like I said, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Another cool thing is he is kind of like a shapeshifter.
Oh.
Which is really interesting. So he can assume the likeness of the current master of the house, or even likenesses of past masters of the house, which I think is cool. He can also assume the likeness of the family cat or dog. Often he spends his days as these animals. I don't know what that says for the actual animals or something. I don't know. And some of the reports say like a snake or a rat as well. So he can shapeshift, but his most common form is like a little old man. Not that he actually wants you to see him. He doesn't like being seen, and he will actually mete out punishment for those that are overly curious about him. So don't look too closely into his existence. He also can become invisible. Honestly, like, invisible is the superpower that I would 100% go for. Like, given choices, I would be all over that, because
Invisibility is pretty cool.
it's so cool. And it's really the little anthropologist heart in me that would love to be able to go somewhere and observe something and be absorbed in it completely. Like, that's part of the problem with ethnographies. You're always an outsider. And people always act differently when someone they don't know is there.
Sure,
right?
yeah. You need
to be this
the ability
completely
to observe without interaction.
Exactly. To be this completely, like, have this impartial view entirely
Yeah.
would be fascinating
That's pretty cool.
to me. And that's such a nerdy thing to want invisibility for. But I'm a nerd, so whatever.
Yeah.
What superpower would you want?
Well, it bounces around all the time. Usually, by default, it's just like flat out regeneration, where if I can chop off a hand or a limb, and then everything else kind of changes. Now, the problem with that is,
So you want to be Wolverine?
well, you know,
basically.
I
mean, you're
would
already
be Wolverine if given the chance.
You're already halfway there. Your name's Logan.
But also, there's some really good superpowers out there. There's time manipulation. There's portals. Oh, portals are freaking
Oh, that would be
sweet.
cool.
I really like, I mean, to bounce back to the canon of the X-Men, I like what Nightcrawler has of being able to bounce between dimensions and use it for teleportation as well. That seems really useful, and yet with
Definitely.
its own set of flaws.
They all do. They all have to,
Yeah.
right? Because any power is going to have its drawbacks.
Yeah, and then I also like the raw cosmic power that comes with the Magneto suite of abilities. The ability to alter magnetism and move things around with just your mind. And it's not just so much your mind, and it's not your body, it is your will that moves them. And that's what I really like
Absolutely.
about it. Yes.
Just don't become evil.
Oh, never.
Meh, I don't know.
I'm a white hat IT guy.
Like I said, he doesn't like being seen. He can become invisible, and he generally, with that, he lets his presence be known through, like, nocturnal noises, like creaks or bangs, stuff that we would consider the house kind of settling.
Sure.
Would
yeah.
be the Domovoi letting you know that he's there, basically, right? He resides within the confines of the farmstead, but mostly within the home itself. So he lives somewhere near or under or behind or in the stove or the chimney, or he's under the threshold of the house, or in the attic or the cattle shed or the stable, but generally, like, the center of the home, the hearth, the fireplace, the stove, they are the places that are central to homes. So it makes a lot of sense that the spirit that's vital to the home is located there, right? I mean, it is essential to your survival.
It is a source
as
of
a people.
life, and also
exactly.
just the ability to maximize on what makes a family valuable. Everyone gathers around. People offer up different skills and abilities, and sometimes they share stories, and that's what makes it worthwhile to hang out as a group instead of individuals wandering the wasteland.
Absolutely. And that's, I mean, we know that as hunter-gatherers started becoming less nomadic and settling down, and
This was a big part of that.
put down roots and made up tales about the unexplainable things that are happening around them, or the outside forces that they could plead to have good fortune, that kind of thing. I mean, this is obviously further down the line from that, but it's a remnant for sure. And it's also a base from where we come from too. I mean, you and I, we both have families we're pretty close to, right?
Yeah.
And we do our own versions of that, of sitting around and shooting the shit and playing games, or drinking and talking, or that kind of thing. You know, we all have our own versions of that, and it's very important to cultivating relationships within your family, to knowing that you have a safe and loving space. You know, something that nourishes us as people, right? And people have needed that since the beginning of time.
Yeah.
Which is why we're not all completely solo creatures out there
it's
on our own.
It's hard coded into our brains.
Exactly.
We need it.
We're social creatures.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's essential that he was part of this central vibe to the home, right? Mm-hmm. He is vital to the prosperity of the home. The hearth is important to the prosperity of the home. So it makes sense that the two are entwined, right? Mm-hmm. Just another note that later on, as Christianity kind of spread, it was noted that he could live in harmony with religious objects like a cross or incense or holy icons and that kind of thing, which to me is interesting because with the spread of Christianity, a lot of these creatures were villainized a bit. A lot of them were already malevolent or neutral. But as, the ideas of the Christian devil came and kind of spread a little bit, these other creatures were starting to be considered bad spirits, demons, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he could still live in a household in harmony with these objects was very indicative of how important he was to daily life and how much they didn't want to let him go as part of something that made their lives good and lucky and prosperous. Yeah. So I think that's really interesting. We are actually going to take a quick break here to play you a promo for Blood on the Rocks, the podcast we talked about at the beginning of the show. It's a podcast that is kind of about the dark things around the world. Like, if you're a fan of the paranormal or true crime, this show might be right up your alley. I know that I'm a huge connoisseur.
Yeah, it sounds really cool.
Yeah, I'm a huge connoisseur of true crime and paranormal podcasts. I love listening to them.
Yeah, and I said it not minutes ago, but I've been too lazy to Google it. It might be an original quote. The song of life is best played in a minor key.
I like that. And it is. I mean, it's fascinating to listen to these dark things because, the psychology behind them is so interesting. You sit and you hear about serial killers and people wonder, why is this so fascinating to folks? And I really think that it's because it's baffling how a human can be like this. It can be this dark. It can be this twisted. And so we're a little removed from it. And I don't typically like the shows that talk about that have like the 911 calls or something that really, really, I guess, humanizes the cases because they're so sad already most of the time. I just want to hear about this thing that sounds like fiction to me because it's so unbelievable that a person could be like this. And that's what it feels like, I think. And maybe this is just me, but that's why I find like true crime fascinating.
That's something really cool, yeah.
Yeah, and paranormal is fascinating for similar reasons, unexplained instances and things that are so mysterious and a little bit creepy. Yeah. I love that. So
let's check out that promo.
Yeah, let's play that right here.
Let's go.
Hello, and welcome to a promo for Blood on the Rocks, a podcast on all things creepy, morbid, or otherwise dark. I'm your host, Akshay Taylor. Join me and various guest hosts as we cover a whole load of subjects. We'll show you the world of serial killers, accidents, hauntings, black metal, and more. Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and all those other fancy podcast platforms. Alcohol and profanity content may vary.
All right, so we are back. That was our promo for Blood on the Rocks.
That sounds pretty cool.
Which is a fascinating name. I like it.
When we get done,
it's so evocative.
Today, I'm going to give it a listen.
And On the Rocks. I mean,
yeah,
it's a great addition to any name. So let's get back to the Domovoi.
Yes.
He is a bit capricious, but generally a family can tell how happy he is by the prosperity of the home. He's also got favorites in the family, so he'll bestow good fortune on them. But if he doesn't like you, you're going to end up having like tricks played on you or have small misfortunes or troubles.
Sure.
That kind of thing. So it's vital to your own well-being to keep him happy, right? And when he's happy, he brings good fortune to the home. He'll also do things like help complete chores. For example, he'll help with the field work, or he'll feed the animals, or he'll tidy up the home and clear out the unfinished work. He typically does this at night while the family is sleeping, and the families take very special care to not sleep in his path. So that'd be like by the stove or around the center of the floor. They just don't want to hamper any of his movement, right? Because he's helping them. So why would you?
So I'm imagining cases of things like the jealous sibling who doesn't like someone who's really close to them in age, and they would say,
we've all had that.
Yeah,
let's be real.
Yeah, they maybe.
Well, I guess unless you're an only child.
Yeah, so if they wanted the Domovoi on their side over their siblings, the person who gets all the blessings and all of the attention, then the folklore would say, then do your best to get on the Domovoi's good side, because it doesn't matter what the people think. If you get the spirit on your side, okay.
Yeah, like if he likes you, then things are going to go well for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, maybe not so much. He's also extremely useful for warning of impending problems or for defending the home against like evil spirits or human intruders even. You don't want to mess with him, basically. The family wants to keep him as placated as they possibly can because he is essential to how well their lives will keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a harsh life, right? So you want as much goodwill as you can get.
Yeah.
They'll attempt to gain his favor or even just stay in his good graces by leaving out offerings for him, like a portion of their supper or porridge, tobacco, incense, juniper, bread, and salt. People actually even kept horses or cats of his favorite colors.
Mm-hmm.
And like in order to keep him happy.
The Domovoi likes spotted cats, so that's the only kind of cat.
Something like that.
Okay.
Or he likes black ones, or he likes tabbies or something.
Sure, yeah.
And the way that they would find this kind of stuff out is like for a horse color, for example. The horse wouldn't be doing well if it's not his favorite color. It would start getting malnourished and stuff like that. Like it just, the horse wouldn't...
Judging a horse
it wouldn't
by
thrive.
its color.
Exactly.
A bit superficial, aren't we, Domovoi?
I guess. But it wouldn't thrive. And maybe it's not a color thing. Maybe it's like a quality of horse or the breed or I don't know. But they considered it like color-wise, right? So they would sell that horse and they would go get a horse of the Domovoi's favorite color. And that horse would prosper, which just kind of snowballed the reasoning that, it's because it's the Domovoi's favorite color, right? But, I mean, who wouldn't want to keep him happy?
I hear you.
And some places even did stuff like they wouldn't whistle, as that could potentially frighten him and drive him away from the home.
Oh, you don't want that.
Plus, whistling is annoying most of the time. Like, if you're really good at it.
All you whistlers out there, don't you listen to Lindsay. Whistling is a beautiful form of expression.
You're a whistler, aren't you, Logan?
I could whistle before I could speak.
Oh, dear. I cannot whistle to save my life. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know.
I had a canary cage above my crib when I was born 550 years ago.
Of course.
Yeah.
So another thing was other places would be really careful to avoid swearing or loud noises around noon or so when he was in his deepest sleep, because they didn't want to wake him up and anger him with that, right?
I know that noon nap. That's a good nap to take.
I wish I knew that noon nap,
especially with a good solid hangover. I hear you, Domovoi. We'll keep it down for you, buddy.
We feel you. Yeah. Okay, so he loves fire and warmth. He loves it, but if he is offended, he may punish the family by burning the house down.
What?
So,
wow.
Another great reason for not offending the Domovoi.
I feel like anybody who gets their house burned down, they know why it happened. They know what they did.
Yeah, it was the Domovoi.
Yeah. Okay.
Obviously.
Okay.
So don't offend him. And here's some of the things that angered him and offended him. Sloppy management of the household, abusive language, or neglect of him.
Okay, so he's like the HR department of the house.
Sure.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
When things go
Exactly.
when things go too sideways, he comes in there and regulates.
Yes.
Okay.
A few less drastic things that he does, other than like burning your house down, when he's angry, are bang pots. He tangles needlework. He'll spread manure on the door. He'll turn everything upside down in the yard, and he'll make the walls creak.
Mm-hmm.
So he's kind of got a lot of aspects of like a poltergeist.
A little bit. That's what he feels the most like.
Which is more German.
He is a
right?
house
But-
spirit. He's not necessarily malevolent, but definitely a trickster and someone that you can only trust if you feel like you've earned his favor.
Right. The nice thing about it is that with poltergeists, you generally can't reason with them.
Yeah.
Right. And with this, you do specific things and you're good.
Yeah.
Ideally, at least. But he's even more like a poltergeist in that he sometimes directed his anger towards one particular family member that offended him. So you can kind of see why they tried to stay on his good side.
Yeah, the annoying visiting cousin or something like that.
Well, no, like with poltergeist, it's interesting, at least from what I'm remembering, they typically latch onto one particular person in the family.
Yeah.
Typically someone that's going through puberty.
Oh, that's a rough time.
It's a rough time. But I mean, the fluctuating levels and stuff maybe have something to do with that.
Sure.
Because hormones are all over the place.
But also it's the becoming of one thing to another.
Mm-hmm. They're in
that-
this transitional stage, and maybe that makes them more susceptible to a spirit's actions or something like that. But it's been a very common theme among poltergeist stories that it's one family member that's getting the brunt of this, that's getting this abuse, and they're generally like 12 or 13-ish years old.
Gotcha.
Which is pretty interesting, I think.
Yeah.
They want to stay on his good side, right? The Domovoi also disliked mirrors and goats.
Goats?
Not a fan of goats.
What's wrong with goats?
I don't know.
Goats-
They're a little frightening.
I've had some fun
Unless they're
experience
tiny
with
little
goats.
ones that are just so cute.
Both alive and cooked. Goats and I, we
That's terrible.
connect on a lot of levels.
No, baby goats are cute.
Baby goats
I don't
are
know about
always
adult
cute.
goats.
Yeah, adult goats. I haven't dealt with them a whole lot, but I have eaten plenty of them.
I do love goat's cheese.
Goat cheese is awesome.
You know what's really good?
What?
We're totally tangenting here, but there's two things that are really great. So you know those little brownie bites?
Roller coasters and no. Sorry, I thought you were asking me what are two good things. Okay, go on.
Well, I mean, we can go there, but yeah.
No.
Roller coasters are great.
At some point, we have to get back to the Domovoi.
So you know those little brownie bites from like Costco? So they're these little bite-sized brownies, and you can put goat cheese on top of them, and they are divine.
Damn.
Because it's that sweet salty thing.
Yeah.
It's so good. Another one I had was one of our friends, her sister brought some cookies to a party one time. Mm-hmm. They were rosemary shortbread cookies. And then we put goat's cheese on top of those. And it blew my mind. They're so good.
Just hearing about them is blowing my mind.
I know. Delicious.
All right.
So I'm fine with goats because their cheese is delicious.
Goats and
their babies are cute.
I'm totally cool with goats on every level.
What are their babies called?
Kids.
Kids? Yeah, kids.
And I learned from someone who owns goats, they like to climb on the highest thing. So whatever it is in their pen, they'll just climb up there and keep an eye out. That's one will just kind of, if you put an
Interesting.
abandoned car out there in the goat pen, the goats will climb on there. That's why you see all the goats up in trees and everything like that. They're a lookout animal. Fun thing about them also, those square pupils, weird things for sure.
Yeah, I think that's why they're associated with like demonic stuff so often is because they're weird looking eyes. They're creepy.
Everything's got weird looking eyes.
I
when you
mean,
hold it up
yeah.
to the human standards. Have you ever seen a seagull's eyes? Oh man.
No, and I never want
Horizontal phobia, ultraviolet perception. Yeah, there's some weird stuff out there.
And they're our official state bird, and they're a nuisance.
Yeah. So friendly reminder, the way that we see things is not the way everything else sees things.
Yeah, I mean, we've got... It's fascinating. Oh, God, that's an entirely different tangent that we are not going to.
Yes.
But yes,
So,
things have cool eyes.
things have cool eyes. Goats are
Except
cool.
for
Back
goats,
to
they're creepy.
Yeah. So
Unless you're Logan and you think they're cool.
yeah. So but the Domovoi doesn't really care for goats.
Does not care for goats.
Okay.
So some people, they would place the head or the skull of a goat underneath the threshold of the home when the Domovoi was kind of getting out of hand a bit. Other reports say that peasants hung a bear's head or like a dead hawk or magpie in the stable or the cattle shed, so he would leave the livestock alone. Kind of not okay with any of that. Makes me sad.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a different world.
Yeah,
You know?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I do. But
But
just
of course-
looking at it objectively from a biogeography angle, please, folks, if you got to kill something, don't kill an apex predator. You know, don't.
Please don't.
There's only so many
Leave
of
the
them.
hawks alone.
Yeah.
The magpies are fine.
The bears, I promise.
Leave the bears alone.
If you leave the bear alone, it will do its thing.
Well, and I feel like the goat makes more sense.
Oh, the goats will be fine.
Yeah, well, I mean, they are livestock that you would raise, right?
Yeah. They're,
A bear, you got to go out and find and kill a giant bear that could kill you.
that would much rather be left alone.
Yeah, and you have
I'm
weapons
sure.
from like centuries ago, right? Your weaponry is not going to be great. It's going to be tough to kill that bear.
But let's put ourselves in the mindset of someone who's beset by an upset Domovoi.
Right.
And okay, fine. If the hawk's got to go, the hawk's got to go. But nevertheless,
Go for the magpie.
ladies and gentlemen, if you can avoid damaging or injuring
Just
or
don't
killing
kill
a hawk,
Don't kill any animals.
a bear, a lion, anything that eats anything else,
You have zero excuse for it now.
yeah,
It is anyway.
Find a better plan.
Yes, please do. Anyway, so they would do things like that to kind of get him to leave the livestock alone or to just kind of get him to settle down,
Yeah.
right? He would also sometimes choke or nearly choke sleeping people, but this is less like anger and malice, and it's more attributed to playfulness or actually trying to communicate with the family to warn them of something.
See, and I wonder if that calls back to sleep paralysis.
Well, that's what we're getting into. This sounds utterly terrifying to me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But I really think that it could be something more like sleep paralysis, or maybe even more likely, carbon monoxide poisoning.
Oh, totally
Yeah.
likely. Yeah, we just talked about how the hearth is pumping out all kinds
Yeah.
of
And if
nice
you-
warming glow in the house in a
Yeah.
nice enclosed area.
And if you don't have proper ventilation, that carbon monoxide is gonna pile up.
Yeah.
Right. And it's very dangerous. Like you could easily die in your sleep from carbon monoxide poisoning.
Oh, for sure. I've done it several times.
Mm-hmm. Died in your sleep. Yep. Weird. You look just fine to me.
Thank you. I've been working out.
So that's exceptionally dangerous. And that was something that really happens quite often, you know? I mean, if you've got maybe you have a chimney, maybe it gets clogged up, right? By a bird's nest. And suddenly all of that carbon monoxide is coming right at you instead of out.
Yes.
Or, heart attacks in your sleep. Something that happened to you in your sleep, like you could die or suffocate.
That's why I
or
wish
wake up terrified, like with sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
So that was the Domovoi that was trying to tell you something, or an quote unquote explanation for those kinds of things, right? So another major service that he actually provided for families was to kind of function as an oracle. He foretold future happiness or disaster through sounds or actions. So a soft or warm or furry touch at night signaled good fortune, and then like a cold or clammy or prickly touch signaled misfortune or death. Moans or shrieks or clangs were all bad omens, and dancing and singing and joking were good ones. Strumming on a comb indicated a wedding that would be happening in the family. He foretold death by, like I said, a touch cold at night, or extinguishing a candle, or even simply by becoming visible. Like you see him and things aren't going to turn out so well for you in the near future. So the Domovoi, among other household spirits, is actually, like we talked about, an effective explanation for fires and for death, for bad luck or crops or animal sickness. And that's honestly part of what I find so interesting about folklore, is that it's used to explain everything. And it really reveals what life was like for these people. To be able to do something about preventing bad things or stopping bad things from happening in such a harsh and unpredictable life would be something that peasants would absolutely wish for, like a modicum of control over things like crops failing or someone becoming ill in their home, you know?
And it's all about, there is a certain magic in the home. We have not only as we discussed, the family, the idea of people coming together, but also just the magic of people moving many as one. So that's something that Domovoi can really help with. He's something to keep on his good side.
Like I said, the thing I love about it the most is the insight into these lives that you get from this. And it's very convenient to have a creature that explains away all of the things that happen in life.
Yeah, we discussed it earlier, that being someone from, a Slavic culture is very different, especially in the paganism times before Christianity. It was a very different lifestyle.
Very different.
And it came with a lot of challenges and a lot of danger.
Mm-hmm. Very risky, very hard.
And when looking over these folk tales, it's important to put ourselves in the mindset of survival with those so dear to me that I couldn't bear to move on without them. And that's something that breeds great stories, really something with a lot of risk and a lot of reward. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I really like some of the stories that you've found for this, Lindsay. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, I think it's fascinating, and it, like I said, gives us insight, which is why we're doing this, right? Mm-hmm. Like, it gives us the context of how this creature became this creature, and also lets us know more about the lives of these people, right? So let's kind of move on into how to see him.
Let's indeed.
Right? So since he doesn't like to be seen, there are a couple of different ways to get a glimpse of him. And honestly, they're both pretty indicative of Christian influence.
Yeah, most things are.
They are. And just as a side note, Logan and I don't have a problem with religion, with organized religion.
None at all. However you choose to make sense of the world is up to you.
Absolutely. I think that religion is extremely useful in some ways.
And it is convenient to have it all written down in one place and to not really discover it except for, is it this or is it not?
Right. And it gives you structure in your life. It gives you a community, and it gives you a way to get through hard times. And I think that all of those things are extremely valuable things. Some people find them in other activities. Some people find it in organized religion. Some people used it in folk religion like this, where they would use these stories of spirits to explain things of everyday life, right? To have that control. And that's a fascinating thing for me. But I also have a hard time when another religion comes in and kind of usurps.
Yeah, I never like it when something gets erased from history.
But I do want to note that it's more a problem with the people that do things in the name of religion that I have than the religion itself, per se.
Sure, yeah. I
just want to be clear on that.
The organization of most organized religions, especially, we got to deal with the elephant in the room, Christianity as a whole, and all of its different flavors. It does breed patriarchy. And what I love about 2018 is we are starting to question patriarchy. That
absolutely
one idea should not be above another, that one sex or gender or just affiliation or orientation should be above another.
Yeah. Equality should be what we're striving for in every aspect of life.
And rise on your own merits. Make your point and let others agree with you.
But then that's just how things evolve. That's how, we've gotten to a point in our world and our lives that we can start to think about those things.
It's taken us a long time to get here.
It has, definitely.
And we've gone through a lot of phases. By way, when I say we, I mean humanity as a whole.
Well, and I mean, even just from this, you can see that, right? We're going from folk religion to really organized Christian religion. And now we're moving on maybe a little bit more towards person-centered, person-focused movement towards maybe spirituality, but more individually based.
Oh, I carry with me my own pantheon collected from different,
And I think that's fantastic.
I study them, I make my deals, and I carry them with me.
Actually, one of our favorite book series, you and I, is The Iron Druid.
Iron Druid.
And that's by Kevin Hearn. And it's an urban fantasy series. But the coolest thing about these books, I think at least, and he honestly encompasses basically all of my favorite things, like linguistics and gods and dogs and just druids, really cool things. Anyway, one of my favorite things about these books is how he treats religion around the world. Essentially, what you believe will happen when you die is what's going to happen when you die. So if you believe that death is going to come for you on a pale horse, he's going to come for you on a pale horse. If you believe that you're going to be taken to Valhalla, you're going to go to Valhalla. All of that. And he does a really good job of talking about that. And this perspective of nothing is exactly true or right because they all are. Mm-hmm. It's all based on you as a person is really, really interesting to me. And that aspect of those books is a very unique one, I think. And I just really appreciate it, honestly. Like, it's such a cool perspective.
Yeah. And it's a really good series. It's not so much about religion, it's about characters.
No, it's absolutely about characters.
Yeah.
And he does a really good job about talking about all the different pantheons and stuff. Like, each of the books kind of deals with a different handful of type of characters. Like, the first book is all Celtic gods. I think the second is Polish. And I think that the third it actually deals with Coyote a lot.
Yeah,
and
that's as far as I got in the series.
Yeah.
And you really need to get back.
Dude, you totally do. Thor, it becomes the main character in that because he goes to the Norse pantheon as well, which I think you'd like that one a lot because
yes,
we know
Thor's
how much.
My buddy.
Yes,
we go way back.
Actually, Thor is an asshole in these books.
Really?
Oh yeah. But it's fascinating. Like, he does a great job with the Norse mythology. Like, he does his research and his writing is stellar. So it's probably one of my favorite series of books ever. Mm-hmm. Highly recommended. Anyway, total tangent, but you should read them. I think that just stemmed from our talk about religion in general, right?
Religion and how all the pantheons can kind of mix and mash together. And really, that's something that has plagued a lot of different cultures that have tried to react to suddenly Christianity, and what you have doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, Christianity was a really big shock to a lot of things because it was forcefully thrust upon these people all across the world, right? And I mean, secondly, they had their own religions already. So a lot of it is the assimilation like we see with Slavic countries.
Yeah. The idea of, okay, all of your culture is now this.
Yeah.
Here you
figure out a way to make this yours too.
Yeah. And it's the old Eddie Izzard thing of, okay, we got these Greek gods. All right, we'll just rename them with Roman names. And now here you go. Here's your box of gods.
Yeah. And so, exactly. And so that's happened many, many times over many, many countries in multiple ways. So it's not just Christianity, but Christianity did this to a large extent, right? They really did. And that's how it spread so far and so wide. But the things that some people did with Christianity weren't the best things that they could have done with it. That's as far as we'll go with that regard.
Yeah, because we know it's changed a lot of people's lives for the better, and know
many people here are Christian still.
Sure, and they're welcome.
I mean, my family
we don't mean to alienate anybody. It's about exploration, but you have to come at it with an open mind.
Yeah.
So
and people did bad shit, they just did. People of all religions have done bad shit.
Sure.
So that is what it is.
Cool.
Let's move on from that.
Let's please.
So I think we were talking about the different ways to see the Domovoi and how...
Yeah, you mentioned that he doesn't like to be seen.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
And we kind of launched into that because they're indicative of Christian influence, like I was saying. So in some areas, he can be viewed by looking through a harrow or a horse collar with straps. It was thought that this method would protect the person looking at him because the implements, they formed the pattern of a holy cross, basically.
Okay.
So sometimes Holy Week and Easter were specified as the best times for viewing the spirit.
All right. Yeah. So just this idea of you can see his influence, but not necessarily him.
Exactly. Yeah.
That reigns very.
But you're really not supposed to.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're curious by nature as humans. So of course we want to find out if something is true or not.
Indeed.
But sometimes it's not the best idea to find out if something is true. And sometimes we come up with exceptionally elaborate ways of seeing a creature like this to make it as absolutely difficult as possible. So here's an example of that. It's, like I said, very elaborate. So in order to view the Domovoi in church on Easter, one had to dress in new clothing and footwear and smear one's head with butter from 7 cows milked for the first time.
7 cows.
Then, I don't know, like 7 cows milked for the first time that year or first time ever. 7 of them.
That's a lot of cows I got to round up just to please a Domovoi.
And then you have to make butter, and then you have to wear the butter and new clothes and be in church on Easter.
Really? Okay.
And then he could be seen by turning around during the liturgy, but the viewer would be ill for 6 weeks after.
So you got to know what you're getting into before you jump on this train. Okay.
I'm not sure that this is worth it when he's helping you out, and honestly, you might even piss him off because he doesn't want to be seen.
If you do it wrong, it's almost worth not doing it all.
Yeah, and you're going to be sick for 6 weeks after. Who has
6 weeks?
Nobody has time for that stuff.
Can't I just leave milk and cookies out for the motherfucker?
Exactly. So, I mean, and that's probably why it's so elaborate, right?
Okay.
They want to discourage you from trying to do this.
Don't get on his bad side. That's the moral of the story.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so our next section with the Domovoi is how to move, right? So he's a home spirit. He lives in your home. What happens when you need to move? So when families move their home, they take their Domovoi with them, right? Because he belongs with the family. He doesn't belong to the home per se. They need to actually transfer him to their new home, but he can't leave the old home without a special invitation.
Yeah.
Right? He has to specifically be invited to come with you. So if he remained at the old home, he would actually end up being hostile towards the new owners and their Domovoi, and bad things would actually begin to happen to the family that left him behind.
Ooh.
Right? I mean, he's your source of good fortune. You don't want to leave him behind, right?
For sure. Take that guy with you.
Yeah, things are not going to go great.
Take him first, take everything else after.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So commonly there was actually like a formulaic invitation, and what it said in the book was, Domovoi, Domovoi, don't stay here, but come with our family.
Okay.
Right?
Works for me.
And it was accompanied by an offering. So one of the things we talked about earlier, like bread or salt or tobacco or porridge or that kind of thing. Other accounts state that before any household items were ever moved, the head of the family, with an icon in one hand, bread and salt in the other. I assume icon is religious? I'm not sure. I'm not sure what they mean by that. But here it is. He crossed himself, so I'm sure it was religious. And he officially invited the Domovoi to accompany the family. There's also record of the transfer occurring by moving a brand from the fire to kindle the new home's fireplace, which makes a lot of sense to me. Is also one where he is transferred at the same time that the coals from the hearth are transferred to the new home. Because why would you leave those there? You know, you might as well start your new fire with something. And I also remember reading something about like transporting him in an old boot or something. But I couldn't really find a good reliable source for that, so that's a maybe.
Oh yeah, but I can buy into boots because they
travel.
Yeah, they're the vehicle by which we travel to new places.
Exactly.
They carry us far and away and home again. A good set of shoes, in many ways, is all you need. Especially
at that time when all you're doing is hard work all day long in the fields. You know, you need a good pair of boots.
Sure.
So another thing is that's essentially how you move him. You do something to invite him to come with you.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, things aren't going to turn out great for you, basically. Another thing is like if the family would be going on a trip for a long time and kind of if they were leaving the home unoccupied for a while, once they packed everything that they were going to take on their trip, they would sit in silence for a few moments, and they would do that out of respect for the Domovoi, like a temporary goodbye to him.
Yeah.
Let him know we are thinking about you. We're leaving, but we're going to come back. And then they'd leave on their trip, and everything would be fine when they came back. I mean, you don't want to leave him and have him burn your house down, right?
Exactly.
Not a great plan.
Yeah, Santa's good side, for sure.
Yes. Okay, so we are actually going to take another quick break to play a promo.
All right.
For another podcast. And this one is actually, they are also part of the Megasode collaboration that we did. She has a segment on that show as well. And her show is called Ignorance Was Bliss.
Oh, cool.
So it's kind of a show about crime and psychology. It's a show where you might find out more than you bargained for.
Man, I bet that Megasode's going to be super awesome. It's got some good stuff.
It really
on
is.
it.
I've seen a list of all the different topics that people are going to do, and they are very cool.
It's like being on a list for a talent show, and I hope ours is up to snuff. I'm going to have to give it a listen.
Hey, ours is great.
I'm sure it's fine.
No, but so she's in that, and I've listened to her show, and it's fantastic. Like, she knows her stuff. She actually publishes quite often. Like a few times a week, I think. And they're long episodes.
If our weekly schedule is not often enough for you, then maybe add this to your list
definitely.
of listening.
I mean,
our feelings will not be hurt if you add another subscription.
Well, that's one of the best things about podcasts, honestly, is that it's never just one, right? You consume them, and then you're always wanting additional ones.
Well, what I've found in my own experience, if you like one, you'll go explore another.
And that's one of the coolest things about podcast, like I was saying. You're always going to want more stuff, and that's kind of why we're trying to bring you promos from other shows that you might potentially be interested in.
Sure.
Too. I mean, the podcast community is exceptionally supportive of each other, and we've really appreciated all of the support we've gotten, and we want to kind of give back for that as well. Plus, these shows are just fantastic.
Yeah.
So we highly recommend listening to them. Once again, the show's called Ignorance Was Bliss. And here's the promo.
That's horrible.
That's true.
So strange.
Usually.
I can't imagine what that's like.
Do you want to?
That could never happen to me.
It might.
Lock him away. He's pure evil. Or insane.
Or human. My name's Kate. I have worked as a forensic psychologist, as well as in prisons and as a crisis clinician. My job was to figure out who gets locked up and who gets a key. To find the humanity in inhumane situations. So, are you sure you really want to know?
Yeah? Maybe.
Because by the end of the episodes, you just might end up thinking...
I felt better before I knew that.
You can find me at IWB Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, sometimes Instagram, or you can email me at iwbpodcast@gmail.com.
All right, we are back.
That was pretty cool.
Yes. So give that a listen.
Yeah.
We highly recommend
if you've
it.
got some time, give it a listen. We were just talking about podcasts and the nature of how much media is out there. Find your groove.
Yes.
If we're part of it, awesome. We're honored. We're going to try to live up to that.
Well, and another cool thing is that my interests are exceptionally varied, and I know yours are too.
Way all
Probably more than mine,
Yeah.
honestly. And podcasts, like, there is something about everything out there, and there is just more and more that's coming out.
Yeah.
That's great. So every niche that you could possibly think of is probably being produced. And if it's not, hey, make one yourself. It's a lot of work.
It
It is a lot of work, but it's worth it. I mean, we get to produce super cool content like this. Sometimes people listen to us even.
You get to say out in the real world, yeah, well, by the way, I host a podcast about monsters. What do you think about that?
So go out, listen to stuff that's interesting to you, keep exploring, and you're gonna go down those rabbit holes that we've gone down and find more and more amazing content. Like there's people are making some stellar stuff out there. All right, let's get back to
the Domovoi.
Actually, we're not getting back to the Domovoi, but we are getting back to his wife.
Oh, there's a wife. Okay.
Potentially. So he may or may not have a wife, and it depends on the area that the tales are from.
Okay, so by default, when you say a folklore character, something that is fictional, has a wife, by default I go to Mrs. Claus.
I mean, it'd be kind of like that if in some areas Mrs. Claus didn't exist.
Okay. So tell us how it's different or the same, or using Mrs. Claus as a framework of kind of the same, kind of different. Does most of the support work, but not actually runs out to go do the things.
Let me tell you about her, and then you can tell me what you think.
Okay. All right.
So there are many conflicting reports about the existence of the Domovoi's wife.
Oh yeah.
Most peasants thought that the Domovoi lived alone without a family, but some said that he had a wife, which she was called the Domika. A couple other terms for her are the Domovichka, the Domovika. Something depends on where, obviously. Or in some other regions, she was known as the Kikimora or the Shishimora.
Oh, I really hope there's a Russian drag queen with that name somewhere.
I'm sure that there is. I'm sure. But generally, the Kikimora / Shishimora, she was even known as her own spirit existing separately from the Domovoi entirely. But somehow she kind of got mashed into his wife as well, because she's like a household domestic spirit too.
Okay.
So it all kind of just mushes together a little bit. She lived under the floorboards, and she came out at night to spin.
Okay, so under the floorboards, you think at first that sounds a little scary to me.
A little bit.
But she comes out to spin kind of like a Western Rumpelstiltskin.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Too bad it's not to gold. Oh well.
Yeah, I can't have everything.
So she appears as an old peasant woman. So that matches with our old peasant man of the Domovoi, right? And she's dressed in traditional garb, but she doesn't have a headdress on. So she's got long flowing hair. Another aspect of the Kikimora or the Domika, whichever you're talking about.
Yeah.
She has chicken's legs.
Chicken's legs.
Chicken's legs.
Yeah.
Which is very Baba Yaga thing. Baba Yaga's house is on chicken legs.
Yeah, we'll admit that's where that comes back in.
So here we go. So she lives in the cellar, right?
Okay.
Or under the floorboards, basically, which is what the cellar is. And she does domestic chores when the family goes to bed, like spinning, like we talked about, needlework, and looking after the chickens in the yard. So that's that's the comparison I'm drawing there. Chickens, taking care of them was like women's work. So it makes a lot of sense that she's got this aspect of chicken legs, or Baba Yaga's house has chicken legs on it because it's like her lackey, basically, right? Plus, it's a house with legs, and it can go wherever she wants it to go.
That's way better than most houses.
She also flies around in a mortar and pestle, so none of this really makes a ton of sense.
I could do that, but I don't want to.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Fair enough. I'm building one right now.
That I would not be surprised by. If the home's housewife was clean and neat, this is what kept the Domika or Kikimora happy. She would help the housewife with things that needed to get done. But if the housewife was lazy or untidy, she would break or she would hide things, and she would turn food sour or tickle the kids at night when they're asleep in bed, which we all know you never want your kids to wake up at night.
Sure.
Right. So the best way to appease her and get this kind of stuff to stop would be to make a brew of ferns.
Okay.
And then scrub all of the utensils with it, because that makes perfect sense.
Hey, whatever works.
Yes. Like the Domovoi, she kind of serves as a domestic spirit.
Sure.
That was kind of an oracle, like he also does. Usually of disaster with her.
Really? So
if someone saw her spinning on the bench in the entrance of the home or on the porch, they would soon die.
All right.
So don't want to see that.
So maybe that's kind of a little bit of a warning against leaving that spinning wheel unstationed.
Something like that.
If you're going to leave your chores alone, bad things will happen.
Put your stuff away.
Fine. If you're not going to do it, she will. But you got to pay the price.
No, just a death omen. And it makes sense that she's doing what she does. She's just doing it, and you can see her do it, and that's the indication that something is not going to go well for you.
Yeah.
Right. But towards the end of the 1800s, she was losing all of her distinctive traits and kind of merging more with the Domovoi solo. Right.
Okay.
There was also actually mention of children too, of the Domovoi and the Domika or the Kikamura, and supposedly if they could be heard crying. It was thought that if you threw a rag over the place that the cries were coming from, which were generally like under the floorboards where she lived,
or under there, yeah, okay.
So if you threw a rag over that place, she wouldn't be able to find her child, and she would answer any questions in order to secure its return.
Oh, that's useful.
I find this a little horrific and kind of tempting fate a little bit.
Yeah.
Because like the happiness of these spirits is supposed to keep you healthy and prosperous, right? And you're hiding their children from them and like basically holding them hostage to get questions answered.
And really, what questions do you have?
Yeah, like,
need to
what
be
are you going to
answered
ask?
so badly?
Right. Am I going to die? Well, did you see her? No, you didn't. You're probably not going to die.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's other things that indicate fortune telling from them. Right. So it feels weird to me that there's something that you would have to know. But I could also see,
as Optimus Prime said, knowledge is power.
I'm pretty sure many other people have said that too.
Or as Duke and G.I. Joe said, a knowing is half the
battle. Oh my God, we're going back to Logan's childhood in the cartoons.
No, we'll box that up. Onward to the Domovoi's wife.
I can see maybe a young girl doing something like this. Like, am I ever going to get married? You know, because we all have the stupid things that we did that we heard fortune telling. Like, there's tales of twisting the stem off an apple how many times, and that's the letter of your future husband's name or whatever. Or there's actually a ton of stuff with apples, like carving a piece off an apple, and the letter that it looks like is the letter of his name or whatever. It's like stupid things.
Because they're 12 cents a bag.
Or something like that. Or I know there's ones with mirrors, like you turn around a certain number of times. I don't even know. But there's many things. Like a young girl wants to know what her future holds, right?
Sure.
And in this time period, that's what your future holds, is getting married. So that is literally the most important thing that's going to happen in your life, because it determines what the rest of your life is like.
Yeah.
Right? So I can see maybe that being a thing that you would want to ask, but I also don't think that you should be holding a benevolent spirit's child hostage.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
You got to walk the fine line somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. So that's basically what we've got for the Domovoi's potential wife. Like we said, we don't know.
Sometimes she's out there. Sometimes she is not.
How do you feel about the Mrs. Claus thing now?
But a little bit. She does. Now, she doesn't specifically aid him in his tasks.
She just does other stuff.
Yeah, the Domovoi's got his set of things.
However, some of it, like when Domovoi is solo, some of it, like he does all of it. So,
yeah. And maybe that, I don't know, that just kind of plays a little bit into, for young women, they saw their only real time of value when they were young and about to get married. And really, also all you women out there, your value is through your whole life. The maiden, the mother of the crone.
Yeah.
We all have something to offer.
Absolutely. It echoes gender roles from that time period too. And we're not going to go too into that because it's pretty obvious what they were, right? You know, I mean, the domain of the woman was the home and the chores, and the domain of the man was like the farmstead and the animals and the crops and That's basically what it was. And it made a lot of sense because that's how you survived, right?
Yeah.
You divvied up duties. Men were probably physically stronger, at least in some aspects. So they did the harder work and the women did the menial work inside. And I don't know. Very, very typical gender roles that existed for a very long time. So, like we said, equality in all things, but it made sense for the lives that they lived.
Indeed.
So, whatever. It is what it is. So, let's talk about the origins of Slavic spirits and creatures.
Oh, let's.
Pretty interesting, actually.
Sounds pretty cool.
So, apparently, the spirits rebelled and fell to earth. So either they were kicked out by the archangel Michael or by the god Svarog.
Oh, okay.
I'm not super great with those names, but it's spelled Svarog. Svarog.
Google search coming up empty in my own brain.
In your brain.
Yep.
I mean, like the main Slavic god that we all know is like Chernobog.
By motherfucking Chernobog.
Yeah, and he's a badass.
He's a badass. Now,
Yeah.
don't you cross that Chernobog.
Yeah, I mean, you want to know more, just go watch American Gods or read the book.
He'll tell you everything there is to know.
Or I think Chernobog is in Fantasia too, actually.
He sure is.
Yeah.
I have
So-
his pin collected from Disneyland.
I think Svarog is. Oh, I think that's how you say it. I think that he's like the god of like fire or something.
Cool.
I didn't look too much into it, but basically he was there, and during the creation of the world, he's the one that kicked them to earth.
What, you weren't there? It was pretty cool.
I wasn't there.
You
Well,
missed
maybe
out.
I was, and I don't remember it. I don't know. We can go into reincarnation a later time.
Some different time. Nevertheless, Svarog.
So either he or Archangel Michael kicked him out of heaven or kicked him out of creation or whatever. Thrust them down to earth, essentially. The spirits that fell into human homes were Domovois. And they became benevolent to their hosts. And those that fell other places, like outside but around the home, were spirits like the Domovoi, which did yard work, the Bannock, which his domain was the bathhouse, and he's a dick. We might talk about him in another time,
Really?
but he's pretty malicious.
Anyone whose domain is the bathhouse,
It's a scary place, actually. Like it shouldn't be. It should be amazing, but and like a sauna, right? But yeah, he was a little bit creepy. Not gonna lie.
Okay.
We'll go into another time.
I look forward to it.
We'll do Creature Feature on the Bannock at some point. The Ovanik, which was the threshing barn, the Chlevnik, which was like the cowshed barn. They all like to guard the homestead, but they're very wary of humans. And actually, in some regions, they considered these spirits subordinate to the Domovoi. So, like, he was kind of their leader, and he held domain over the whole homestead, but he was specifically in the home itself.
Not unlike the head servant in a household delegating duties to others.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was kind of like that, but I think that was more that he had more interaction with people than these other spirits did.
Okay.
Right. So it made a lot of sense that they considered him their leader, essentially. Right.
Yeah.
And then in some other aspects, the Domovoi took care of literally everything, and those other spirits weren't there. So it depended on the region.
Okay.
And the area. But the spirits that fell into the wild places, like the forest or lakes or rivers, that kind of thing, were generally actually malevolent. So these were creatures like the Polovic, the Lulashi, the Vodunoi, or the Rusalka.
The Rusalka.
Yes.
That dude owes me money.
So yeah, like I said, they were generally malevolent. And you just kind of went out of your way to stay away from them.
Just, yeah. General rule of thumb, don't piss off the things around you. Okay.
Well, especially the stuff that lives in the wild.
Sure.
Like, as a Slavic peasant, you're going to know, stay away from that shit.
Yeah.
It's dangerous and
dangerous.
unpredictable. And
The goal is to see tomorrow. That's what the goal
exactly.
is. So.
You want to live through this day. Don't go messing with forest or lake spirits.
Yeah.
Right. And we'll probably talk about some of those other spirits and creatures that we mentioned, so we're not going to dive any deeper into those today.
We'll put a pin in that for now.
Pin in that. If you have a specific one you want us to talk about, let us know.
If you want to jump the line, let us know. If there's something you just got
and
here,
we might not let you, but we'll see.
You want that hot leshy action, you let us know.
Oh, that's so disturbing. We are actually going to try to cycle throughout the world a little bit.
Oh yeah, we're trying to give everybody a chance and really to
we want to do some
exploration, not so much.
Exactly. It's lesser known from all around the world. I know the Domovoi isn't necessarily lesser known per se, but I mean, you ask a random person on the street, they probably wouldn't know what the Domovoi was, right?
Yes.
But we have some great stuff coming up. Like we even have a creature from Antarctica. We have a little something from everywhere, and we want that to be what we continue doing for sure, because that's important. I like everywhere being represented in some way.
Exactly.
I think it's the most fair and the most interesting, honestly. So, okay, moving on. Christianity. I know we've been talking about this kind of throughout the whole episode. But as we said at the beginning, Christians were generally the ones to write down these tales.
Exactly. They roll in, we exchange one pointy hat for another, and we write some shit down.
Precisely.
That's all you need to know.
So, and they were writing them down as they moved more and more into Slavic countries. So remember that these tales were oral traditions, and people just kind of knew them, right? So for these Christian missionaries or whatever to come spread the word, and they started writing down all the stuff is there, which is highly valuable, and I think it's fantastic that they did write it down. But of course, by this time, Christianity is creeping its fingers into the core of Slavic folklore and folk religion.
It's all up on.
So what we have written down are a lot of accounts of people at that time. So elements of Christianity had already started trickling into the stories that we had written down, right? So a lot of the old stuff that we know is less there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? So, but reverence for like Mother Earth and kind of faith in the existence of creatures like the Domovoi were some of the longest lasting aspects of Slavic paganism, especially in the rural areas where it didn't spread as quickly. Christianity didn't spread as quickly, right? The beliefs, or the Slavic folk belief, didn't really start waning until about the early 1900s. And in the late 1800s, he was actually still considered benevolent, but he began to start taking on traits typical to like the Christian devil imagery, like we talked about, the tiny horns and a tail and that sort of thing. And actually, the biggest shift we saw was that some peasants started believing that dead sinners were the ones that would become house spirits. So they were cursed by God for a specific period of time. And eventually people started using the traditional house blessings as less of appeasing the Domovoi and more towards protection from his snares, protection from the stuff he might do, right? Which, I mean, that's honestly kind of just a shift in perspective, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Thinking he's a little bit more evil, but they were doing exactly the same stuff as they were doing before. But they still generally viewed him as benevolent. And apparently he was actually deeply insulted by being referred to as a devil, which I understand.
Yeah.
But his basic core image of being favorably disposed toward his family and guarding the household was there, but slightly contaminated.
For sure. Yeah. It's this idea that it goes against what we say you should do.
Exactly.
And this idea of him becoming a devil, a demon, this small kind of mischievous spirit. That's not what he was. He was somebody that
he cared.
Yeah, he was. I really like this idea that
he's part of your family.
He's part of your family. Yeah, the part of you that is the family person, outside of as a man who, he's kind of like way back in 8th century.
Your heart.
Yeah, Slovenia. You have You fight, you farm, you hunt, you do all of these things to keep your family alive. But the part of you that cares about your family, that lives on.
Exactly. He's the
like
heart
that.
of the family.
Yeah.
And I think that's why he stayed in the minds and the hearts of the Slavs for such a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's hard to think poorly of something that meant the most to you. You know, he was the core and the heart of what it meant to be a family unit, the stuff that got you through each hard day.
Yeah.
And I think that I appreciate that it stayed benevolent so long, and the fact that there are people that still believe in him today, that they still believe that their homes have a Domovoi. I mean, you'll look around and honestly, you'll find accounts of people that still believe they have a Domovoi in their home.
Yeah. Which
I think is really cool. I found when I was looking around, I found a post on the paranormal Reddit, the subreddit for like it's r/paranormal.
Oh, I got to check that out.
Yeah,
for sure.
and actually, I'm putting it in our show notes, the link for it. But they were talking about like, here's the stuff that's happening in my home. I think I have a Domovoi, and then a bunch of people chime in after with like, I had this experience. So it's really interesting that it's still happening. But we also have some narratives from the Russian folk belief book that I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
From pre-revolutionary Russia. So like the early 1900s, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And Logan is going to read some of them for us.
I'd be
They're
happy to.
Accounts of the Domovoi.
Let's get rolling. This is from accounts of Domovoi narratives from folks in pre-revolutionary Russian. So this is before the early 1900s. They are from the Russian folk belief book. Here we go. My very own father told me the following shortly before his death. Don't stand in fear of them. However, my dear son, I shall soon die. Last night, just after I lay down, but before I fell asleep, someone came up to me. I heard his steps clearly, and suddenly he placed his cold hand to my lips, and I also clearly felt the touch of the hand of the unknown person who had come in. Indeed, somewhat later, my father died from a blow. Another one is, from olden times, the household of a certain merchant observed the ancestral custom of placing a pot of kasha in the attic for the Domovoi each Saturday night. This kasha was always cooked without salt. Once, on leaving the house, the merchant instructed his cook to prepare an unsalted kasha on Saturday and place it in the attic in the evening. Whether the cook or was dissatisfied with her master or whether she forgot, in any case, she salted the kasha for the Domovoi. On returning from his journey, the master didn't even manage to enter the passageway, when from which the attic, a pot of kasha, came flying at his head. Seems he threw the pot black.
And just note, kasha is porridge.
Yes, I could have said that.
It's okay. On to the next.
On to the next one. They say that on the farmstead of Senkuvka, near the town of Kumbyansk, there lived a certain young, healthy, hard-working peasant in an old house built way back in his great-grandfather's time. And he was well off and lived in complete satisfaction, except the house was too crowded and seemed to be growing into the ground. So he bought some land and built a spacious new house on it, and began to live in it, having dismantled the old one for firewood. But when moving to the new place, he didn't invite the Domovoi. With the move to the homestead, the livestock began to get sick, farm management fell apart, and the master himself began to ail. And the longer he was there, the worse it got. About 3 years passed, and the master was continually ailing, and the farming didn't amount to anything. But in the old ash pile, which is the heap of trash and the old stove had been, there was a whining at night. They abandoned the old one, left him all alone. They wanted to live all by themselves, to drink the bitter cup. And after the peasant had heard his lamentation, yearning came upon him, and he took to thinking differently. He turned for advice to his people, who knew about these matters, and they advised him to take bread and salt, to go at night to the old ash heap and beg his Domovoi to come and live with him in the new house. The peasant followed the advice given to him, and after a little time he himself started to recover, and the farming was set in good order. Yeah,
Right. Those are interesting.
Yeah, so if he likes things a certain way, try to keep them that way. No salt for the Domovoi.
Don't mess with what you know works.
Yeah.
You're going to get a pot thrown at your
If
head.
it ain't broke, don't fix it.
So I think those were just kind of interesting glimpses
Sure.
into these into people's actual perspectives of the Domovoi, because we can sit here all day long and just tell you stuff about him, but it's interesting to see how anthropologists and folklorists have pulled information out of stories like these, because that's how we know about these creatures, right?
Yes.
Are from tales such as these, and you can definitely see in them some of the elements that we spoke about earlier. You know, he's very particular in his likes. You want to keep him appeased, otherwise, you know, you move without him, right? Like, stuff's gonna go poorly for you, that kind of thing. So I think that it's nice to see some of these stories that the tales of the Domovoi came from.
And it's really interesting to see these firsthand accounts. I mean, it's very much like how we would look at history. To have a first source is so much valuable than a third party source. Someone who has seen the story and reports it directly, that is really, really valuable. And when it comes to the paranormal, boy, we have to come at it with a bit of patience and a bit of an open mind. But when he says, things were bad, I did this.
Things got better.
Yeah, that have no causation to my own health, to my own farm.
And I mean, causation doesn't necessarily mean correlation.
Yeah.
But it could.
Yeah, ice cream cones may or may not cause drowning.
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes everyone go to the beach.
That's actually a great example of that.
Indeed.
Definitely. So the Domovoi may not be there. He may not exist. He may not be the reason for these things happening. But maybe he is. Mm-hmm. You know? I mean, we don't know for sure. They don't know for sure. If it makes sense and the things you're doing are working, keep on doing those things, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we have for you today on the Domovoi. Did you want to talk about him anymore? Any
Well,
aspects that you'd like to discuss further?
I just really like that this has a personal nature to it, that it is tied to the family,
The
that
home,
it is
yeah.
tied to the duties of the household. That is something that is we haven't yet hit.
Yeah.
But we do both know from our background in stories and folklore that there's a lot more that ties into this. But let's let this be the kind of front runner in these stories that are tied specifically to a family. That really, yes, of course, these stories get carried forth, but as outsiders, we can't possibly understand them because we never knew the grandfather that did this particular thing, that left their pipe in a certain place.
Yeah, and maybe that kept happening, and they knew it was him,
that
or
didn't like salt in their porridge and all of these little things.
or they saw his apparition and thought it was the Domovoi or whatever, right?
Yeah, there's lots of things it could have been.
Yeah, it's so cool, and there's actually a lot of creatures throughout the world that are similar to this. That are household creatures that are benevolent, that they're there to help you and make things easier. Which at the same time, I'm kind of like, or was it somebody just doing all the hard work that you barely noticed? But you know, neither here nor there. One of the main creatures that's constantly compared to the Domovoi is the English brownie. And they're very similar in looks and attributes. But basically they're another household spirit that does things like help with chores and stuff. So if you're interested in this, maybe the brownie is another thing to check out. The brownie might be something you're actually more familiar with, and the Domovoi less so, or vice versa.
Yeah. They're not mutually exclusive.
No, but they're very similar.
Yeah, you can still keep peace with the house spirit if you wish to enjoy the benefits of the magical brownie. No,
We're talking about a different kind of brownie.
Different brownie.
Yeah, this one's more of a goblin
Little
spirit
bit more
type.
Goblin spirit type. But I hear what you're saying. That it's kind of a bit of a mix and match.
Yeah.
Cool.
I kind of like how we talked about alignment.
Yeah.
With the Grootsling, and I kind of want to keep doing that.
Okay.
What do you think? Should we be talking about what alignment we think this creature is?
Well, with the
because who doesn't want to use creatures for their D&D campaign?
Yeah, with like the note that not everything fits neatly into little boxes and categories.
Of course.
But yeah, sure, we can run that exercise.
We can make up whatever we want.
Sure.
Right?
So the Domovoi, I would put it as
I'm kind of thinking lawful good.
lawful good, maybe.
Between lawful good and neutral good.
It does kind of
No,
make
no,
up
no.
its own rules.
Maybe lawful neutral. Because it has its own, it abides by its own laws, right?
Sure, but it doesn't ever really work toward designs of destruction.
I know my decision.
Yeah?
My decision is neutral good.
I'll agree with you on neutral good.
Because it leans towards being helpful.
Yeah.
But I mean,
if it's
neutral, it's gonna go with whatever it thinks is.
Yeah, its natural
right.
state is to move things forward.
It's not to make things adhere to a certain set of rules. It's also not to make things as chaotic as possible. It's just whatever it believes is the correct thing.
Yeah, I think
right?
I think I was getting there after some drunken humming and hawing. In about 40 minutes, I would have gotten there after mentioning Godzilla at least 3 times. So we're there.
Godzilla. Done. We got this. No, I think neutral good.
Cool.
I think. And he wouldn't really be someone you would maybe fight at all. He'd be more of like a character you met.
Yeah, you would encounter.
You would
the
either
Domovoi.
help him or he would help you or whatever.
Yeah.
So maybe add him to your next campaign. I don't know.
For sure. Yeah. Work a Domovoi in there.
One of these days we need to start our own campaign.
Oh, yes, please.
Yes. I think that'd be fun. Okay. I think that we've tangented enough.
Indeed.
Tangented enough. So let's tell you where you can find us.
Yes.
You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Folklore on the Rocks. You can find us at Twitter at
Folklore Rocks.
There's pictures, there's notes, there's sources, like we've talked about numerous times on our website, folkloreontherocks.com. We also do have a Patreon, and so you can donate to that and get some cool benefits. We're going to start posting some cool stuff on there pretty soon here. But there are already benefits in place, like decals, stickers. The higher tiers have a random creature that you potentially will get 3D printed for you.
It'll be freaking sweet.
Yeah, Logan's in charge of that, so we'll see what cool things he comes up with.
Oh yeah, I've got good ideas for the Domovoi. It'll be funny.
And then we also have a Patreon button on our website if you don't want to be a monthly donor, but you still want to help out. Anything you can give is appreciated. It immediately goes to equipment and editing costs. And that helps us out immensely so that we can keep doing this because we want to. We will have a merch shop coming soon, and with Patreon tiers, you do get coupons for that. We also ask that if you have any personal stories about a creature, a monster, a cryptid, even if you have no idea what it was, email them to us. Our address for that is stories@folkloreontherocks.com. And we want to do a listeners episode.
Yes, please. We know that technology pervades our whole world, and it's not Pixar. It didn't happen, but we do understand that it's still possible to see some weird stuff out there.
Yeah, maybe you can't explain it. Maybe you want to reach out to other people and see if they saw something similar, and it's just a little creepy, and it's just a little cool, and we want to share that with you. And so send them in if you've got them. We also ask if you feel so inclined to please rate us and leave a review on iTunes. Actually, we're doing something special with that right now. If you leave us a review on iTunes and you screenshot it and email it to us at mail@folkloreontherocks.com, we will send you out some stickers.
Oh, cool.
But
Sticker pack.
make sure you include your address with your screenshot.
Put them on your Trapper Keeper.
Yes. Logan, people don't have those anymore.
What?
Maybe your laptop.
Oh, yeah.
Or a water bottle or something.
Do that.
But they are cool stickers. So if you do that would be cool. You'll get some swag out of that. Again, that email is mail@folkloreontherocks.com. And once we get to 100 reviews, we're going to do a bonus episode. So not just our normal episodes, but an additional one. So that will be with a listener selected creature. So we'll do some sort of poll for that. If you have suggestions, email those to us as well. And just tell your friends. Word of mouth is fantastic marketing for us. I know I've listened to many podcasts because a friend recommended it and found some amazing stuff out there. So hopefully you can help do that for us. And we'd really appreciate anything you do in that regard.
Yeah.
So, thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you so much.
See you next Sunday.
Oh, we hope to see you right here. Grab another drink, and we'll do this whole thing all over again with something fresh for you.
Yes, we will.
All right. Thank you.